I'm done trying to impress everybody else, and I'm done trying to live the life that everybody else is always trying to force on me. Um, and that I'm going to be true to myself. I'm going to be a champion, and I'm going to lead myself, because it's when we lead ourselves that others follow.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back, Championship Leadership Podcast. And we got Eric Couch with us today, not Eric Crouch. I know we had a funny conversation about that, but I remember Eric Crouch, the Heisman winning, Nebraska football quarterback back in the day when I was playing college ball still. So at first glance, I thought that's who I was going to get to talk to today. But even better, we got Eric Couch from Flower Mound, Texas. So how you doing, Eric?
Great, Nate. Thanks for having me on. And I do get fantastic customer service out of Nebraska.
I
I
bet.
mean, those people love me in that
Yeah,
state.
I
Um,
bet.
I did. I
That's good
had,
stuff.
years ago, I was working when I first started. I worked for my in-laws for 14 years, and I was doing admin stuff. And every day I'm having to talk to these, this group, this office that did, paramedical exams for insurance.
Yeah.
And these ladies were the sweetest ladies ever. And we were best friends, and we would
Oh
chat,
yeah.
and they were so gracious to me. And I didn't really pay attention to where they were, but they're in Nebraska. And then one day, it'd probably been about a year. I mean, we talked every day, every
Yeah,
day.
yeah, yeah.
And she's like, Eric, I've got to tell you something. And I'm like, okay, what's that? And she's like, I have a picture of you above my desk. And I'm like, and she's like, I know it's not you. It's not you. But every time you call, all of us girls get so excited because we've got that picture of Eric Crouch on our desk. And then we talk to you, and we just kind of imagine. I'm like, it's a little creepy, but it's pretty funny. But you know what? As long as y'all get all of my business process really
Yeah,
quick, and you're as sweet as you are, I don't really care what picture you look
totally.
at.
Yeah.
But
I was gonna say that's hilarious.
it was the
You should get one of
funniest
those
thing ever.
replica Heisman trophies, and then you ever go to Nebraska, you just carry it with you.
Yeah, just carry it with me. Oh my goodness.
Oh, too good. Well, that's not why we're here today. We were connected by Bob Safale with American Stories, and then of course you're part of Boom America, the TV show
Yeah.
with Kevin Harrington, one of the original Sharks on Shark Tank. And I'm a part of that show also. So it's just been awesome to be able to have some of you folks that are a part of the show, highlighting your companies, what you guys do, and the impact that you're making, and getting to know you guys at a deeper level through the podcast has been awesome. So, one question I like to ask, because it is championship leadership, is what comes to mind for you? Obviously, probably not Heisman trophies and national championships in football, but maybe it is. I don't know. But yeah, what comes to mind for you for championship leadership when you hear that? Like, what does championship leadership mean to you?
Man, championship leadership to me means, one of the things that I truly believe in my core. And again, I work in retirement planning and protecting people's assets in retirement. And yet, the number one best investment you can ever have, the number one ROI you could ever have, is investing in yourself.
Yeah.
It is so critical. And we all start off with this, when we decide that we even want to entertain the idea of investing in ourselves, one question always comes to mind for every one of us. And it can be debilitating for a lot of people. But the question is, who am I? Right?
Yeah.
Um, and it's such a powerful question, and it's such an invoking question. And it's one that we're going to have to face in the darkness, in that dark, shadowy alley, where, like you see in the Batman movies, where the rain's coming down and you can't see. And I mean, that's kind of where our minds go when we start asking the question, who am I? Who am I to go on TV? Who am I to write a
Yeah.
book? Who am I to just live the life that I've always dreamed of? Right. And that living the
Yeah.
life may not be being on TV. It may be having a cabin in the woods by a stream and looking at the stars at night and having a fire pit, because that sounds pretty
That
ideal to
sounds
me as
amazing.
well. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but champion leadership is when I hear that, that is deciding that, I'm done trying to impress everybody else, and I'm done trying to live the life that everybody else is always trying to force on me. Um, and that I'm going to be true to myself. I'm going to be a champion, and I'm going to lead myself, because it's when we lead ourselves that others follow, because we're all looking for someone that's passionate, that's got direction, because we want to be a part, and that's what momentum is. Yeah, so
100%.
that would be my least initial thoughts on that.
I love it. Yeah, that's beautiful. It's always fun to hear, you know, almost 400 episodes in. I think it's been 400 different versions of, you know, what it is for them. So it's interesting to hear how we can slice it up. Well, yeah, let's talk a little bit more about you and what it is that you do. I know, like you said, insurance, financial planning. I know you got a podcast. But yeah, tell us a little bit more about you and how you got to where you're at, and how that has you here today on the show, and what you're looking forward to through Boom America as well.
Absolutely. Well, so I have a podcast called Living a Legacy, where I interview celebrities, Kevin Harrington having been one of them. And I talked to him about how, it started in March of 2020. I don't know if you remember what was going on in March of 2020.
Yeah, what happened back then?
People were freaking out. The sky was falling. Nobody could find any toilet paper.
Right.
And, we're all asking each other and friends on Facebook, does anybody actually know anybody that's gotten sick or got a cold or a flu or anything, right? Because at that point, nobody seemed to know anybody. And yet the sky was falling, and we're all quarantined to being at home. And I was like, man, I need something positive, man. I need something like some encouraging people and others. So, I was talking to a guy that was doing some stuff for me. And he wasn't doing so well on the social media advertising at all. I'd hired him for that, and I was about to fire him.
Yeah.
And then I found out that he also did a podcast, and he interviewed like a bazillion people. And he's like, would you be open to doing a podcast? And I was like, man, that sounds amazing. So I started interviewing. My very first one was Patrick Warburton, and he's the Elaine's boyfriend from Seinfeld, but he's also in Family Guy. He's the deep voiced guy that talks like this. Hey, Peter. And, I'm talking to Patrick, and Patrick had just raised $4 million for St. Jude's Hospital. And he has this big golf music festival called the Warburton Classic every year. And we're sitting there on this podcast, and he's talking about how, and as we're going in the podcast, he's literally like, and we're officially under lockdown in LA right now. Right. And it just happened. The world, and started in LA. And then as we go on, he starts talking about, he's like, you know what? My children have grown up. They've scattered to the four winds. He's like, I don't know what it would take to get them all together. And yet, because of this pandemic, we're all under one roof. They've got their significant others here. He's like, we're sitting around drinking wine. We're going on walks. We're playing board games. He was like, when everybody else is focused on the world falling apart, I am so grateful for this opportunity to have my kids here. And it just kind of flipped a switch in me. And I was like, that's exactly what I want to be this podcast to be. And it was just, how are we using our influence to impact the world around us? And I've had the opportunity to interview, Les Brown and George Lopez, and a bunch of singers like Clint Black and Tracy Lawrence and Crystal Gale, and, actors and all kinds of folks. And, one that I talk about all the time, and the reason I said yes to Boom America before I heard anything else, I literally heard one sentence. A friend tells me, she's doing a, reality TV program, and it features Kevin Harrington. And I'm like, I'm in. Sign me up. And I didn't know anything else. I didn't know I didn't know any of the particulars about it. But when I interviewed Kevin on Living a Legacy, it was huge, because, there was a lot of things. He had just done this book called Mentor to Millions. And it's a great book. It encouraged me to actually bring my kids into the business and bring them with me on trips. And it had such an impact on them and just on our relationship to each other. But one of the key things that Kevin said when we were talking was, it's got to be a win-win. And I've always felt that way, and I've believed that, but it really just solidified it. And, it's made it so much easier for us to not only make deals, but to walk away from deals in business. And it's like, I would have typically maybe considered it or tried to push it. And I'm like, no, it's got to be a win-win for everybody. Because if everybody doesn't feel like they're winning, then they're not going to give 100% and it's never going to succeed. And that's why the dude's taking all these businesses over $100 million is because he makes sure everybody wins. And I believe that to my core. So when he said it, it just really resonated. And I tell that story probably every week.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Beautiful. What, how many episodes are you in now? What 3 years later on the podcast?
I slowed down. So I lost my publicist and I was having to edit them. So I've done about 40, 45 episodes.
Yeah.
And had a blast. And I've been talking. I was like, I need to get that going. My last one was Dog the Bounty Hunter. And it was with he and his wife, Francie. And I met them in LA and we just started talking. And I was like, hey, everybody needs to hear the story, because I heard their story and it was incredible of how they met.
Yeah.
And I was like, let me get you on my podcast. So we did. And
that's awesome.
It was fantastic.
Yeah. That's one of the things I enjoy the most from the podcast is just, the people you get to meet, the stories you hear. And it's, selfishly, it's been a fun.
Yeah. I get more out of it than I think they do. And I'm like,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
Just hearing people's stories.
Yeah.
So do that. And then for 25 years, I've done retirement planning and focused specifically on what's called fixed annuities, but also everything that goes along with retirement planning. So, I say anything that doesn't involve you losing your money. There's a little tongue in cheek. There's a lot of people that can help you lose your money. I'm just not one of them. I protect it. So even in kindergarten, I was the kid after school getting in fights because some bully was picking on my friend. And it didn't matter if I won or lost. I just need them to know that you can't pick on my friends, right? I had 3 older siblings. They beat the tar out of me every single day. So me getting punched didn't really have much of an impact. I'm like, you don't hit as hard as my, brother who's 9 years older than me. So there was just I was never intimidated by other people. And I'm like, I can have solutions where people are taking advantage of every day. And I can study to show myself approved. And do right by people. And I love what I do. I'm passionate about it. And that's what I've done for 25 years. We predominantly, we work with entrepreneurs and business owners, but I am the advisor to financial advisors. So, they're working 24/7. So that means, it takes a lot of pressure off me. If it's a fit, I help people. If it's not a fit, I'll tell them where to go. And I'll refer them to other people. And we do more of a family practice type deal. So we're bringing in the attorneys and the CPAs, and I really stay in my lane. And then I try to coach and I try to make sure everybody's on the same page. Right.
Beautiful. Love it.
My gift is more of a connector and then a nerd in my niche. So,
absolutely. And you said you brought your family into your business?
Well, my family, yes. So I actually worked for before I even was dating my wife, I needed something to do over spring break in 1998. And we were just friends in college. And I had been on staff at churches the whole way through. I had a full ride for vocal performance, and I've been able to sing all over the world and Carnegie Hall 4 times, and all just had a lot of fun singing. And I've been on staff at churches, and I figured that's what I would do. But I needed something to do over spring break, because I'm never just still. It's not in my DNA. So she's like, well, my dad owns a company. So I show up there at 8:30 on Monday morning during spring break in 98. And he takes me to the back of the office, and he's got a 6-foot long fold out table. And it's got a set of papers with a bunch of numbers to call. And it's got a little script. And then it's got a phone with like an extension cord going 100 feet all the way down the hallway around the corner. And he was like, say this, call these people. And I had an absolute blast. And people were like, that sounds amazing. Tell me more. And I'm like, I've done this for like 5 minutes. I have no idea what I'm talking about. But I can try to transfer you to John. But if I hang up on you, again, I've done this for 5 minutes. I apologize. I'll call you back and I'll figure out how to get you transferred. And, that started. And then when I graduated college, we had been dating and were married at that point. And I needed a job. They needed an employee. They were always together. So I was like, well, while I figured out what I'm going to do, maybe I'll just work for them for a little while. Because we were always together. We went to church together. We went on vacation together. We had Sunday lunch together. And they were always together, and they were always talking business. So I just figured I'd work for them for a little while I figured out what I was going to do. And then 14 years later, I'm still working for them. And at that point, I'd gone from being admin to I got into their annuity division and was recruiting financial advisors and teaching them about them. And I just fell in love with what I was doing.
Yeah.
And then, after 14 years, I'd talked to them about ownership, and they said, that's just not in the cards here. It's just for the, children that were born into the family, but you've got our blessing to go start your own. So 11 and a half years ago, and May the 4th be with you.
Yeah.
Of 2012, I started Provision Brokerage, and we haven't looked back.
Oh, that's incredible. What's that relic behind you there on your desk?
There's a bunch. So I've got,
yeah, that one.
Yeah. Everybody needs a rotary phone.
Everybody.
Just a reminder of yesteryears.
A reminder of that first day on the phones with the script.
And you know what? You certainly didn't want to get in a rush back then, because if you didn't go far enough, you'd have to start over.
Yeah,
right?
I remember those days.
Go all the way around. My kids are like, "What is that, Dad?"
I remember though, we would have it down. You could do it fast if you like. Yeah,
absolutely. And we had all, in my house, we had like that 50-foot extension cord. So, I was the baby in the family. So my siblings would go take it from the kitchen, because it's always in the kitchen, walk down through the living room into the hallway, and they would go duck down inside of our linen closet where all the sheets and towels were. Totally. And they're closing the door so everybody can't hear. Privacy. Of course, we're knocking on the door, and, run by knockings and try to do a party line and get on the phone when they were on it, and all kinds of stuff.
Good stuff.
That you can't do now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what's I like, championship leadership. I think great leaders have great vision and also courage to take action on that. So what's the vision for you? What are you looking to accomplish? The impact are you looking to make, even short term, maybe 5-10 years from now? Time seems to fly by these days more than it maybe did in the past, but yeah, what's the vision that you have for you and your company?
So a question I started asking myself a couple years ago, when everything really started changing in my life and I started investing in myself. And I tell people it's the simplest question you'll ever ask, and it's the hardest question you'll ever answer. And that is, what do you want? You know, we don't even know what we want for dinner. And yet we're trying to ask kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right. Just what do you want? And that allowed us to move and get the home of our dreams. That's allowed me to start traveling again and speaking and starting podcasts and getting on, I get on TV regularly and speak and get interviewed on ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox. And I've interviewed Ice-T and Martha Stewart and Dan Kennedy and stages like Carnegie Hall and NASDAQ. And I got to interview Nigel Farage, the creator of Brexit, in London. And part of that's just asking, what do you want? And then saying yes to opportunity and being open to opportunity. So, when I'm looking at the future and vision and leadership, we're focused on two things, right? Building that really solid foundation. Because, a house can't stand if it's on a weak foundation. So making sure we've got that foundation and the processes in place, regardless of who's doing the job. Mm-hmm. But then also, investing in people. My son is 20 years old and he works for us. And then his was, he wants to be an entrepreneur. So, we're starting 3 businesses together.
Oh, very cool.
And I'm bringing him with me. And because the best thing I can do as a dad is invest in my family. First, invest in myself, put your mask on first. When you're in an airplane, if there's an emergency, but then invest in those around you. I guess when we're talking about the future and investment, we were in Albania week before last for an annual conference for a bunch of missionaries. And one of the guys was like, I want to invest all this time in people and I want to build this, but I don't know if I'm having the impact, and I could be there for 10 years before you see fruit. And I just don't know how best to do that. And then if I'm investing a bunch of time there, the last thing I want is my kids to feel abandoned. Right. And I was like, man, I hear you. So as we were talking, I was like, and I just had this epiphany. I was like, I have an idea for you. What if you focus all your time investing on your family on the mission field? And then you bring other men in and you help them learn how to invest in themselves and invest in their family. And they're watching you as you invest in your family so that your kids don't ever feel abandoned or taken advantage
Right.
of.
Right.
And these other men can see how to be a man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, I think that would be a true win-win. And that's going to connect with them way more than you being out at their house at midnight trying to tell them about a God that they don't know who he is anyway.
Right.
But every man on the planet needs a daddy.
Yeah.
Who tells them that they love them and that they're proud of them. I don't care what nation you're in. I don't care how old you are. We all want a daddy that says he's proud of us and that he loves us. And I was like, man, if you do that, I think you're going to have a bigger impact than you could ever imagine. So, for me,
absolutely,
it comes down to a lot of the same things. I want to invest in myself. I want to invest in my wife and my son and my daughter and help them be whatever they want to be. And in the process of that, help the people that come in my path and ideally encourage them and living a life of just authenticity of, here's how we can do it. And we can do it together. You're not alone.
Yeah. Right.
Whether that's your retirement plan or your life or your marriage or your faith or whatever it is, you're not alone. And there's people out here that truly do care about you and love you and want to walk with you and help you accomplish whatever goal it is that you want to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. What, switch gears a little bit. What's a moment for you, maybe a critical moment in your life where, had you made a different decision, your life would look very different? And obviously you haven't, because you are where you are today, but is there a moment in your life you can look back to, kind of like fork in the road, because I think there's a lot of people, you go back to March of 2020 through today, some difficult times for people. We'll always have some difficult times, but oftentimes we want to know how it plays out before we make the decision, which isn't possible, but we can learn from others that have chosen those moments to see how they did decide and how it turned out for them. So is there a moment that comes to mind for you that, could have looked very different had you chosen differently?
Many.
Yeah. Which one, right?
The one that comes to mind most quickly, and then we've told this story countless times. I almost had Catherine in here with me because she's the president of the company. I'm the CEO, and we run it together, my wife.
Awesome.
And I. Awesome. Been married 23 years. In 2015, the wheels came off. And I mean, off.
Yeah.
We were the poster child for a mega church in Dallas here, literally on the billboards all over town. And the TV commercials every day, 5 o'clock, I'm getting text and phone calls. Hey, I just saw your commercial. And we're up front singing every week in front of millions and millions of people worldwide. And my dad had moved in with us unexpectedly with Alzheimer's, and he was just super anxious. And my wife broke her back, and the company was having issues, and there were spending issues. And I mean, literally every month there was a flood in the house. I mean, every single month that year leading up to it. And the day after 4th of July, the day after Independence, with fire in her eyes, my wife said, "I am done." And she screamed for the kids, "Come here. They ran out the door. And it took me about 30 seconds to have a 9mm in my mouth and almost pulled the trigger.
Wow.
And people were like, dude, she was only gone for 3 days. Like, how long did your wife leave you? How long were y'all separated? And I'm like, 3 days. And they're like, 3 days? And I was like, dude, it took me less than 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Almost in my life.
Wow.
And the thing that stopped it is as I'm sitting there on the edge of my bed and I'm holding a gun in my mouth and I'm about to pull the trigger and I've got pressure on the trigger. It's just the only way I can describe it is like a movie reel just started playing and I just saw pictures of my kids. And it's like, is this where you want to stop the movie of their life? That this is going to be imprinted forevermore.
Yeah.
And I was like, no. So I text my best friend and I was like, she left. And he calls me up and I can't speak. I'm just bawling and crying and snot bubbles and everything else. And he's trying to, And he was like, do you want me to come over? And I couldn't speak. And he finally just said, hey, buddy, if you want me to come over, just press a number and I'll be there. And I pressed number on the phone. He's like, I'm on my way. But, you know, things happen fast, really fast.
Yeah. Right.
And you've got to have that foundation of just who you are, of faith, you know, in the God that you believe in. I'm a Christian. It's who I am. I don't force everybody around me to have the same faith as me, because that's not realistic, but it is who I am. And I tell people, like, this is who I am. So good, bad, or ugly, you know, it's me. But you know, it's who we are. And I've had a lot of things in life, but you know, that was a moment where, I almost ended it. And
right.
we shared that with hundreds of couples and in front of large groups repeatedly, just telling our story. And of course, I always end the story with, you know, 20 minutes later, I'm like, now you may be asking yourself, did I pull the trigger or not? And it kind of lightens the mood in the room a little, but I'm like, no, I didn't. I'm still here. But you know, there are some people that aren't so fortunate, and that's where we hopefully can just love on people and find, you know, those in need and encourage them and build them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that. We start to wrap this up. What, you know, if there's one or two things you could give the listener that if they implement today would help move their life forward today, what would that be?
But just take the time to ask yourself, what do I want? You know, and, you know, ask yourself that, but then go do something to distract yourself, because consciously you're not going to be able to answer that question. You're going to have to kind of table it and go for a bike ride, go make dinner, exercise, play a board game, read a book, go to sleep, get some rest. And as you're resting subconsciously, you are so much more, there's so much more power in your subconscious than in your conscious, right? And your subconscious will work on this and come up with a solution. And, you know, allow yourself to dream bigger than even you think is imaginable. It was amazing, you know, when we decided to move and we were going to get the house of our dreams and stuff like that, you know, part of me was like, I could never do this. I could never, you know, who am I? Right. And yet when we finally decided to pull the trigger and I looked at the resources, I'm like, you know, we've been paying for this house for like 6 years now. And yet initially we didn't think we could, because, well, we've been paying this much for a house and now we're going to be paying this much. And yet the resources were there the whole time to accomplish what we wanted. And we've seen that a dozen times over since then. You know, so I always ask the question, and I'll finish on this, right? You know, one of my favorite shows growing up was the Beverly Hillbillies, you know, Uncle Jed, Granny, you know, Ellie Mae, who could forget Ellie Mae, right? But in the opening scene, Uncle Jed's out there and he's hunting and he's got his shotgun out. And I always ask people, do you remember what he was hunting for? It was rabbits.
I thought it was Texas tea.
but that's what he ended up getting,
found,
right? He shot the hole in the ground and he got the Texas tea, you know, black oil, black gold, you know, Texas tea. And the question I always ask people is, you know, Uncle Jed had owned that land probably for generations. He may have inherited it from his dad. So was he a millionaire only after he shot the hole in the ground or before? Because the oil was there the whole time. And he owned land the whole time. Right. So it's just about perspective. And do we believe you've got all the gifts and the talents you would ever need to accomplish anything you ever want to accomplish? It's just about your perspective and belief in yourself. So I would encourage anybody out there, you know, it's time to start believing in yourself, investing in yourself, and asking the question, what do I want?
So true. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time today too. And I don't know if you're a social media guy or if there's a way that people could connect with you after the show, if they feel called to do so.
Yeah, Nate. So you can find me on Facebook, I'm on there way more than I probably should be. Just under Eric Couch, you'll see a picture of me with, I'm standing in front of the NASDAQ Jumbotron in New York City, and it's got my name and picture on it. So, you'll see that picture of me. And then, I'm on Instagram, although I'm never on it. Or you can go to website is ericcouch.tv, and you can learn out more. You can see, me speaking or podcast links to the podcast, or just learn more about what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get those linked up for you too, so it's easy to access. But thanks, Eric. And hopefully we get to meet here in person sometime in conjunction with the show. That would be amazing. Would love that.
Absolutely, man. That'd be awesome. I can't wait.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
Thanks, Nate. Bye.